Okay, so after our last episode, which had a lot of swearing in it, and I'm going to try to kind of get back to our normal, not very much swearing in this episode. But so I'm gonna use some euphemisms here.
Okay.
So I was fascinated in the last episode by the profanity page
Yeah.
of Memory Alpha, which does at the top of it have a quote from probably the most famous swear word in Star Trek, which is when in the Voyage Home when Kirk says and a double dumbass on you, as the quote.
Right.
But so I just wanted to look
The
at and
Voyage
see, and I'm
Home
gonna
has some very fun profanity, kind of all
yeah,
around.
and no, I'm going to go through the list of profanity that has appeared in Star Trek, and I'll use euphemisms for the stronger profanity for
Okay.
if anyone has like kids who are listening to this. So, ass looks like that one ass they've said ass quite a bit because that's an okay thing to say on TV. Just some highlights from ass. They said ass quite a bit because you're allowed to say that one on TV. So like Archer tells Soval that he saved his Vulcan ass. Oh man, has anyone ever called someone a Vulcan asshole? That would be a pretty good. That'd be a pretty good bit. I should be a writer for Star Trek. Even in the original
I mean,
series,
I know that, like, I forget if it was in the show or in the movies. Like, sometimes McCoy will say, like, "Are you out of your Vulcan mind?"
yes, yes.
Which is always good.
In the original series, actually, Scotty calls somebody a jackass, which is pretty, I think,
Okay.
pretty racy for that show.
Yeah.
Picard says he's going to make an ass of himself. O'Brien says he's going to make an ass of himself. Yep. And then, then there's a few uses of it in the modern stuff. Bastard. Again, I think that one you're allowed to say more recently. So there's the first use of bastard, it appears, is in Enterprise. Archer calls Silic an ugly bastard.
Enterprise, the edgy Star Trek.
Yes, yes. Then not a lot of bastards though. Only a couple of uses of the B word.
Okay.
In Enterprise, Tucker uses it to describe a neutron microscope.
Oh.
And then Scotty refers to a Klingon chancellor as the B word in the undiscovered country. Those are the only two uses of the B word.
Really?
Well, no, as just that word. They say "son of a bee" several times.
Okay.
So Tucker calls Soval that. Tucker also calls Keswick that, and Archer calls Keswick that. Archer calls Shran that. Man, a lot of uses of this. These are almost all of them are in Enterprise actually. Yeah, and then
So Enterprise was when they decided they could use the sort of like soft swears.
well, McCoy calls Spock that in Search for Spock, and then Picard in Family in the episode I hate, Family, learns that his brother called him that, but he doesn't actually use he kind of like trails out before he finishes it, kind of a yippee-ki-yay situation in the PG-13 rated one of those. Bloody, let's see, got a lot of uses of, so bloody they were allowed to use back in the old days, so they call like the bloody something a couple times in the original series, and even in the animated series, Scotty once calls something.
Is it usually Scotty saying it? Or?
No, so it's Chief Vanderberg, Harry Mudd. Then Scotty calls the computer a bloody big scatterbrain in the animated series. Then Scotty uses it twice in the Undiscovered Country. Then there's some like a minor character uses it in TNG, and then Scotty uses it again in TNG in the TNG episode that he's on. So it is a lot of Scotty. And then Miles, of course, Miles is going to use it.
Yeah.
Miles uses it several times. It looks like throughout that show. And then Malcolm uses it, in Enterprise once.
Okay, that also makes sense.
Miles says bollocks once in an episode we've watched, actually. Damn it is used. Weirdly, damn it is used less than a lot of these other ones. So damn it is used in Wrath of Khan. Then it's only been used in Enterprise. Oh no, looks like Enterprise, and then looks like a few times in TNG as well. GD is used a few times throughout. It's used in a Short Treks episode. It's used in Voyage Home, and then but that is viewed as like a more strong language than damn, because it is used less often. It's more used in the modern stuff. Dick, they've twice in Lower Decks did someone call somebody a dick.
Okay.
Yeah, feck, as you mentioned, is last episode
Right.
is used once in
Irish
Picard. Frick is used once in Lower Decks, which I guess frick is considered to be a swear word in this case. Hell, it looks like hell might be the one that's used the most. They use hell.
That makes sense.
Way back from the
I feel
original
like
series on.
I picture Janeway saying hell a lot, like doing a lot.
Well, I was gonna say
"Get the
I
hell
picture.
off my
I feel.
ship," or some, that kind of
I
thing.
feel like Bones says that kind of thing a lot. Looks like too.
Mm.
Yeah, they say it a lot in. They say it a few times in. Not a lot, I guess. They say it like a couple times in the original series, and then they say it in like the original series movies, and they say it a few times in TNG. No, there's no. Honestly, I'm not sure that I've seen any Voyager usage of swearing at all. Now that I'm looking at it, I gotta look that up at the end of this. Piss off is said a couple times, or like piss off, or piss me off. Piss off is only used in Picard, and then in the Final Frontier, McCoy says, "You piss me off." The Spanish word of MFR is used once in Picard by Rios. The S word. The S word is also used. Oh wow! Actually, no. The S word, it looks like that's the one with the most.
Really?
Which is interesting. So,
Is it just all new stuff, or?
Looks like it's used in a couple movies, and then then it's used a bunch in Discovery, like a bunch in Discovery. It looks like. Then it's used. Yeah, it's used in the newer movies as well. And then Picard says "merde" in TNG, which is the Spanish version of that, I believe, or the French version. I don't know.
I guess probably French. Yeah.
Yeah, so Picard says that a couple times on TNG, but he doesn't say the actual word. Yeah, I mean, a couple times in Picard, and then there's a couple of Klingon profanities that are mentioned, and then a couple
Sure.
like patak and stuff like that, and then Romulan profanities. So as far as I can tell, I think the only episode of Voyager that is listed on here, yeah, the only use of swearing in Voyager is the Species 8472 recreation of Boothby, stationed on Terrasphere 8, referred to the concepts making up the United Federation of Planets as tolerance for all species, the Prime Directive, called those Targ manure. And then in response to those statements, Tuvok corrected Boothby and stated, "Your metaphor is colorful but inaccurate." So
interesting. Yeah.
no,
see, I feel like
no
I
swearing
picture
on.
Janeway as having a lot of like dams and hells, but
Yeah. But no, I guess not.
Guess not.
She does kind of seem like a little. She's definitely kind of hard bitten in this episode, I think.
yeah,
But,
this is a very "Is Janeway actually a bad captain?" episode. I feel like.
So yeah, I mean, what did you think of this? Well, I mean, we actually.
Yeah, let's do the yeah.
All right. Welcome to Out of Contreks Show, where two guys who've seen part of Star Trek try to watch all of it in no particular order. I'm Ryan Howard.
And I'm Brady Jungle.
And today we're talking about Latent Image, which is Voyager Season 5, Episode 11. Written by Joe Monosky, Eileen Connors, Brandon Braga, and directed by Mike Vehar. I will just say notably the teleplay for this is by Joe Monosky only. The story is by Eileen Connors and Brandon Braga, which I would say that possibly Brandon Braga not being credited on the teleplay is one of the reasons why this episode is pretty
It's
good.
quite good. Yeah, I did think during this episode, like, it is a very, I felt like, I didn't think well written in terms of like the dialogue. Like not that it's not well written, but like what struck me is just how it's like kind of conceived and constructed felt very, like the kind of writing of it felt very like well done, and just sort of like how it all plays out, and well directed, I thought too.
Oh yeah, I think it's So I was gonna mention that. Yeah, Mike Vehar, who I think we recognize that name. He's definitely directed some other stuff.
We've seen that name before because I keep thinking it's Voyager.
He directed like 7 episodes of DS9, 13 of Voyager, 1 of TNG, and 10 of Enterprise. And according to his Memory Alpha entry, Ronald D. Moore said that he's like his favorite director on that show.
Oh, cool.
This is really, really interesting looking episode, which is not something you can say of that many Star Trek episodes. Like it's noteworthy when they have like an interesting like visual style. I think this episode is really good for the first like 2/3 of it, and then I think the last third of it is like fine. I think that like once it's kind of like revealed what's going on, I think it's a little
the kind of mystery is over. Then
it's not bad, but it's just like it's less compelling. Like the beginning of it, you are kind of like, what is going on? And then also like how they figure it out is really good, you know? And I think even like 7 being like, what you're doing is wrong. Like that scene is so good. And then I think that like once they're like, this is why we were doing it, I think that part of it is a little bit less compelling. But anyway.
Yeah. Although I think it is an episode that like it manages to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah.
In terms of like, right, because it does like go through all of that and then still like has a decent amount of the episode kind of dedicated to the like sort of like decisions and dealing with it, and like right, even like the last scene I do think is this sort of like very good kind of it ending on this sort of like there's no easy way out and everyone is dealing with this and like it's going to take time but they're going to get through it together kind of type of
for sure. It reminded me actually a little bit of if you remember Author the episode.
I felt the same way about that, where it's like it's kind of like two fully different things and manages to like make it all the way through both of them in the space of an episode.
Yeah, which is interesting because it kind of tells me that like Voyager, they really shouldn't have been doing 2-part episodes, because not very many of their 2-part episodes are very good in my opinion, and like but they could have done this thing where like what if we turn this 2-part episode into a 1-part episode?
Right, and just like get through it all.
They're pretty good at that. So but the Emerald synopsis of this episode, and then you can take us into it, are when the Doctor discovers evidence that his memory files have been tampered with, it sets in motion a chain of events that lead to the recollection of the death of a crew member, one the Doctor believes he was responsible for. I mean, this really like spoils the episode. I'm glad that I didn't read this before I didn't really remember this episode. I didn't remember this episode, and I was like pretty, wrapped by the beginning of this episode. So
yes, I think that is one of the real like strengths of the episode is the mystery of it, and the kind of like the sort of like red herrings they throw out there, and like things they kind of start, and like I think it is real good in that sense. So the episode starts out with, and like I also really like these kind of through, I think it's both a kind of writing and directing thing, but to have like the camera kind of continues to play a part like sort of through the whole story is like it's good TV, I feel like. But yeah, because it starts out with the Doctor with his like ridiculously oversized camera,
yes,
which I did find like that was, I thought, very funny that like apparently in the future like the bulkiest piece of equipment on a ship that has like tricorders and like medical devices that can kind of cure people by like waving a little lipstick container near their head, that like cameras are this like huge bulky thing.
Well, in fairness to him, it's not just a camera, it's a hollow imager, and so it does probably have to have like more stuff in it, because not only is it like can create a hologram of like the stuff it takes, it's like it's basically also an X-ray. So if you think about it in that standpoint,
once I did that part, I was like, oh, okay, I guess
it's pretty small for an X-ray machine. So in that sense, it's sort of like, it's like if you had, it's like now, like your camera is in your phone. It's like, what if also you had an X-ray machine?
I have like 3 of them in my phone.
But it was an X-ray machine that also didn't give you radiation,
Right. Yeah. It is pretty great. But yeah, it's very much like coded to look like a camera. And he's kind of like doing sort of these full body scan images of everyone on the crew. I thought they were going to, and was kind of disappointed when they weren't, because it starts out with him like, like kind of pointing it at everyone and saying like, okay, now turn 90 degrees to the left, and they kind of turn from like facing you to profile, or like, one side to the other side. And it starts out with like Tom Paris sort of like facing to the side, and he's like, now turn 90 degrees and I was like really hoping he would tell him to like just turn around and face away from him.
Yeah.
but he didn't. He like turned to like take a picture of him. And then he has like a little scene with Naomi Wildman where he's kind of explaining what he's doing. And then he's with Harry Kim, and he's like, "Okay, Harry Kim, let's like look at your scan." And so they kind of pull up this, like it makes a full, like, what was it called? Body Worlds or Body Worlds? Do you remember that like traveling exhibit that it turned out had like real severe ethical
stolen
problems?
Corpses? Yeah. I think it was called Body. What was it called?
Oh, I meant to look this up when I was watching it because that was the first thing I thought of, because it like sort of builds up a hologram of him like from the inside out. So it starts like his skeleton and then adds his muscles and blood vessels and all those things.
Yeah, Body Worlds was the first one of these. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I know they've like tried to do a few other ones that apparently the other ones are also.
It's
oh wow, that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the I think we're both looking at like in January 2004, the German news magazine Der Spiegel reported, based on internal emails and records as well as statements from von Hagens, that his company had acquired corpses of Chinese prisoners from capital punishment.
Yes. And apparently there was another one that, because I also remember this, like after that one, then there was like another one that also apparently openly sources its bodies from unclaimed bodies in China, which may include executed prisoners. So
that one I think is still going. That one's called Bodies: The Exposition, the exhibition.
But yeah, I think I remember one of them was like traveling. Like I went to one of them because it was traveling to like the science museum. But yeah, then afterwards, I feel like more of the kind of questionable ethics of it have come out, and I think they've both kind of fallen from grace a little bit. But anyways, it's that sort. So like you see kind of, and then like it builds out all of Harry Kim, and then the doctor's like, oh, this is weird. Like there's basically finds like a scar, and like evidence that like Harry Kim had like some sort of neurosurgery performed on his brain, and the doctor's like, and like based on the technique used, like I know that I'm the one who did it, but I don't remember doing it.
And at this point, Harry Kim says, "I don't remember that either." You know,
right.
like he, which is interesting. Like it's, you know, he, at this point, you're kind of like, "Oh, that's weird." Harry doesn't remember it either. You know,
right?
But then obviously, that's
yeah. It was so I did go back and rewatch the scene kind of once the reveal of the episode happened. I was like, oh, I kind of want to go back and like, because at first I was just like, well, why doesn't Harry remember it? So then I like went back and rewatched these first couple scenes to see like if they kind of give any, like if they sort of act it in a certain way or anything. And it's not like super obvious because like Harry doesn't have really any lines until like the very end where he's just like, I don't remember it either. But he does kind of have this very like uncomfortable look on his face that I feel like you could interpret more as like, it's not the kind of like shocked look that you would have if you found out that like your brain had been operated on, and more that just kind of like something bad is happening and I don't know how to stop it type of look. And so then the doctor like goes to talk to Janeway. Well, so first to like do her kind of physical examination, because he's like, well, you wouldn't come to sickbay, so I have to come do it here. And Janeway's like, well, what all have you found about the crew? And he really, really kind of buries the lead, I feel like, in this.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you had found out that, like, your memory had been tampered with and one of your, like, crew members had an operation that no one remembers, you would be like, hey, I need to talk to the captain about this right now. But instead he's just like, well, there was, like, a latent virus that I had to treat that's going around like one of the decks, and like somebody sprained an ankle or whatever, and then he's just like, oh, by the way, like Harry Kim had this surgery. And Janeway is kind of like, oh yeah, well, we'll have to like, I'll make sure that I have like B'Elanna Torres like scan your program to like figure out why you don't remember this type of, but we'll like, she's busy doing something else, but we'll add it to like the list of things to do.
Yeah, playing it pretty cash though, I think at this point.
Yeah. So then the doctor goes and talks to 7 of 9 to be like, can you scan my program for me, because like I want to figure this out as soon as possible. Which is, I think, another like Yeah, I think a good bit of writing to like, because they like set the thing that happened at a point in time that was before Seven of Nine came in on the ship,
Yeah.
so that way like you have someone to kind of like that doesn't know what's going on to sort of help out the Doctor with it.
Yeah, I agree. And you also have someone else who is kind of uninvolved to act as like a moral compass or whatever at, toward the end
Yeah,
of
that's
the
true, because
yeah.
she ends up
Yeah.
being the one that kind of is arguing against the captain about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like that was a really like kind of like a really smart thing of like understand like being like, oh, like this is the only time you could have really done this. I guess not necessarily. You could have done it later on and just said it occurred like longer ago, I suppose. But like I was just like, yeah, this is a really smart like understanding of like the dynamics of your show.
Oh,
I
like
felt.
this is the point in the show. Like this season would have been is kind of the best time to do this episode because
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
like Seven is established, but still like you can be like, well, like a year and a half ago you weren't on the ship, so it can have happened. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. Again, just I felt like a very well kind of like conceived and crafted um, like episode. So then when Seven comes to sickbay to scan him, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember any of this. Like, I don't remember talking to you, and like, I don't remember the surgery. And so then she kind of like goes into his program and finds these files were from his memory were deleted. Or no, does she? No,
Yeah,
I forget if she looks at his
they
files,
go to the
or like, is that when they look at the camera?
Well, they go. Well, I mean, they look in his files and they can't figure out something. They go to the holodeck and like look, and then they look at his they look at his camera. Yeah, there I think because some stuff's been deleted off his camera too.
Yes, kind of from a specific point because he was like, I was taking pictures with my camera all the time, and like it's weird that there's no pictures from like this kind of range of dates, and so she finds like some residual like fragments that she can reconstruct, and so that's when you first see these images of like there's these shots of like this birthday party for this ensign, and he's like, well, I don't know who that is. I don't recognize her.
This part looks really cool. Like this is like it's
yeah,
like very
it's
kind of
like
creepy.
flashes of like
yeah,
like images that are very
yeah. It's very kind of like eerie, and you're like, I don't know who this person is, and like, and again, Seven doesn't know who she is either, because Seven has not been on the show at this point, like,
yeah, and yeah, so you see like her, and then you see like them on this like shuttle mission, with her and Harry Kim and the Doctor, and he's always still like got the camera and is taking pictures of things, and then there's a picture of like an alien on the shuttle, kind of like shooting. Some sort of weapon,
and it's like shot from like a really weird angle too, where you're just sort of like it almost appears like he is like dominating like the viewer, like it's because it's like shot from below, and he's kind of like looking down.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of all that that's kind of all they piece together at this point. And so then he goes to talk to the captain again, and he's like, I think like something happened and we were attacked, and then like everyone's memories of it were erased, and like this like kind of what was deleted from my program and what's in my camera is sort of the closest thing that we have to some sort of like piecing together what really happened.
And then like Janeway and like Tuvok kind of like after he leaves like look meaningfully at each other,
Yeah, because they convince him. They tell him like, okay, we'll make sure that we like Tuvok will investigate all of this, and we'll have Torres like kind of start digging through your program. But then they say like, because you're such a important part of this, and like your program was tampered with, we want to make sure that you're not tampered with anymore. So I want you to like shut your program down and put a bunch of like kind of security safeguards around it so that no one can mess with you, and then like we'll turn you back on when we've figured it out, but we don't want to put you at risk.
And he doesn't like this plan.
Right. So that's when he sets up the camera in sickbay as kind of like his own little like security camera that is like, if anybody comes into sickbay, like take pictures with the camera, and then makes a backup of himself.
Yeah, this
so that
this sequence is so good. Like this is such a
yes,
smart.
this is I think one of the
Yeah.
another one where it's just like really it's well designed and like a good plan, and then like very well filmed too. Like
Yeah.
the way it's shot is very like visually like interesting in that. Yeah, and so he makes a backup of himself. So he's like, if anybody comes in and tries to mess with my program, I will get turned back on and like kind of like system restore myself, so I still have whatever memories they tried to delete, and then like I'll also have the camera pictures to see who it was. And then like it just shows sort of the computer screen, and in the like reflection of that you see like the door open and close, and then someone comes in but you never see who it is because you're just seeing like the reflection on this screen, and then it's like files deleted, and then the door opens and closes again when they leave.
And it's very again very creepy, like very atmospheric. It really did make me sad that we'll probably never, that it's probably impossible to get a good HD version of this, because like that scene is it's just like it's all played out in like shadow basically,
Yeah.
but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really well done.
And then it's like and the level of his plan is like so fun, where it's like he sets his camera up again, begging the question like, why are there no cameras in the future? Like, why are there no security cameras? But
right. Well, I think also, but like there are. I think it's maybe that he's just like, but those are all tied into like the ship's computer, so like they would probably delete that too. So he kind of has his own.
That's true. That's fair.
That was kind of my guess. But yeah, there are, I think, definitely scenes in Star Trek where it's just like, why doesn't the ship have security cameras all over the place?
But yeah, then it's like also like turn me back on, and then like also like restore my memory. So you have like a great moment where like Robert Picardo has to act like he is suddenly remembering a bunch of stuff, like, which I think is kind of
like
fun.
At first he's just like, what's going on? And then like suddenly kind of jolts to like knowing what his own plan was, and so he like goes over and gets the camera. And then it also like it does the same thing as before, where it kind of like is building the body from the inside out. So it just kind of keeps the like sort of tension and not knowing, like kind of draws it out in a very like dramatic way.
So really good sequence. And then like I by this point I was like, okay, well it's Janeway, but I wasn't like. I was at this point. I was sort of, again, because I still just did not remember this episode, and so I was sort of in the mindset of like, okay, it's Janeway, but like, like she's been replaced or something like that. Like that was kind of my working kind of theory at this point.
Yeah, or like mind controlled, or
yeah,
because they showed you this like unknown alien that attacked them, right? Like you kind of think that like, oh, like that's the bad guy, and like that there's somehow we have to figure out what these kind of outside forces are doing to the ship type
right
of. And so he sees that it's Janeway, so he goes and confronts her and is just like, why are you tampering with my program, and like this is a conspiracy. And then Janeway tells him the truth, or tells him like I guess part of the truth at this point, that she's like, something happened during like at that like thing that you're starting to remember, and it caused a sort of like fatal error in your programming, and the only way to like make you be able to function again was to delete your memories of that whole event. And the doctor gets like really mad. That's just like, why would you sort of like do that to me without my consent? And Janeway's just like, because we need a functioning doctor, and like I made sort of a command decision for the whole crew, and then it's just like, now I'm going to do it again. Basically orders him to sickbay, brings in B'Elanna Torres and Tom Paris, and is like, we are going to delete your memory again, essentially by force.
Yeah, and no, I do think that like the show ultimately in this case is like Janeway is wrong, which I think is like a big thing that you and I always talk about on the show. Of like, I think one of the biggest problems with the show is that Janeway, I think, is sort of among the worst captains in terms of like her track record at making decisions, in my opinion anyway. And
yes. But I think in a way that like could be really good and interesting, except that I think the show is not willing to acknowledge that. Right? Like if you made a show about a captain that like is trying as hard as she can to do what's best and like is just kind of flawed and makes bad decisions in the heat of the moment, and like not because like out of trying to do the wrong thing, but like she's really trying hard to do the right thing and just she's in a bad situation and then keeps making the wrong decision. Right? Like that would be really interesting, but I think the show isn't willing to have a like flawed captain and is just like, no, she's the best actually.
Right. Yeah. I think that is the issue. Is that it's sort of like the show is like holding her up as this sort of like, not always, but like generally speaking, like some sort of like paragon of like virtue and or strength.
And I wonder how much of that is because at the time it was like a big deal that we had a woman lead on a Star Trek show as the captain.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they're like, well, obviously it's bad optics if like the first time that we have a woman in charge that then like she's bad at her job. We don't want that to kind of be the message, because that I think again, like I think at the time was like dominating the conversation about Voyager a lot more than like now going back and watching it, like that's not kind of the defining thing about Voyager, but I feel like that was sort of the conversation at the time.
Sure.
And so they probably did have to be a lot more careful with like how they present her as a captain.
Yeah, but
it'd be so much more interesting if like that was to really do stuff with that element of the character, instead of having it always feel like I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but she's clearly making the wrong decision here.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, I think that the show is like she's doing the wrong thing, and she's kind of doing it, and it's like you understand why she's doing it, but also like it's well written in that like one thing the show I think gets it a lot, and it doesn't always work, but I think it does work in this case, is that like the Doctor does not always feel like he is considered a full member of the crew.
Yeah.
And I think that like probably the person who like least considers him that way is Janeway. And so like that stuff is all good. I think that like my issue with it, to the degree that I have one, is that like Janeway is sort of annoyed at him for finding out. And I was like, well, that doesn't really seem fair. Like, it's like if this happened to anybody, they would feel this way. And she's just sort of like mad at him for like figuring out that like this had happened. And it's like, well, I understand that it's like kind of a pain for you, but like it is understandable like why this is upsetting,
Yeah, I think there is something kind of, as the episode goes on, it does kind of become about this whole thing of like, if somebody you care about is like going through something hard or dealing with something, and like that's also like difficult, like it's difficult for you to be there for it. You know what I mean? Like, especially like there's a scene like close to the end when he does like kind of remember everything and they show him everything, and then he starts to do the same thing again, where he gets in this kind of like loop and is just like freaking out about it, and they have to kind of like shut him down. And I think it's Torres says like, well, here we go again. And that just felt very like, that felt like a very real life thing to me, of like of having someone like in your life that you care about that is struggling through something that's very difficult for them, but like because of how they're processing it, or like express, right, like things that then like it's super like it's very difficult to be the person there with them, and like the easy thing to do is to either like give up on them or like kind of dismiss it, or just like, I just want this to be fixed and over, and that's not how it goes. And so I think that's kind of what it, by the end, what the episode becomes about is just like everyone's decision, and like particularly Janeway's decision to be like, to kind of stay with him and help him through this, like even though like it's not good for her either.
Yeah, I think like it's because sometimes I look at some of these episodes that are about, I mean, I love episodes about the kind of like less human characters on these shows. And as I was saying to you in text the other day, it's like it is kind of like remarkable how almost every really good episode of Voyager is about either the Doctor or Seven or both. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think not all. We were talking about my 100 list the other day, and I have a
Sure.
couple on there that are not
Yeah,
like
but yeah,
those.
the majority of like the real good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like those episodes, but I think also like sometimes, and I think especially like it's funny. I think that like some of this stuff is just now starting to age a little more poorly in my mind because now we are seeing. I don't want to say the consequences, but we're seeing the result of morons who think that their computer could be a person.
Sure. Yes.
And so I'm like now it's a little tough now sometimes where I'm just like yeah, okay, like
Yeah, where it's like the Doctor is a computer program that like in this story like actually is a person, but like Grok is not a person. Grok is just like a series of like inputs and outputs.
yeah, and it's like I can still suspend my disbelief for the episode, but it's just interesting to see how that like real life people being stupid has led some of these things to a bit
Yeah.
less resonance. But I am always trying to like when I do an episode, I watch an episode like this, I'm trying to figure out like what is like the real world version of this. And I think obviously you're right, like some of it could be like kind of vulnerable persons type things. But I think also like another aspect of it could be there's a bit of like child rearing where it's just sort of like
Mm-hmm.
what level of like responsibility, do you
Yeah.
do you give over to like someone who is still like kind of like figuring
Figuring
stuff
out how
out.
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does like at the end of this episode like the reason why we haven't actually said why this happened yet, have we? Like
No, I guess.
but the reason why this has happened is because basically he went on a mission with this woman who was and Harry Kim, and they got attacked by an alien, and and you see like these cool like when his memories get uploaded, yeah, you see all of these like really really well shot like kind of like flashbacks and stuff that are like
Yeah,
really
and then
interesting.
they end up eventually showing like the full scene that includes all of those little like fragments.
Yeah, and they got attacked by this alien, and then the alien shot Harry and this other ensign who I can't remember her name, like Jatal or something like that.
Jatal, I think. Yeah.
And the Doctor only had time to like save one of them, and then he chose Harry Kim, and that's basically it causes the Doctor to have this sort of like existential breakdown, or one might call it like a malfunction, a program malfunction, where he's just like he feels guilt, and also he feels like he is being forced to confront the trolley principle basically of real life, like the
yes, and I think what they kind of get at is that like this is a consequence of because they've sort of allowed his program to grow and him to have more like humanity and personality and develop relationships with people, in that like this is something that if he was just like an emergency medical program, he wouldn't be capable of like having this kind of crisis about it. It would just be like, yes, like the program just tries to like triage and like act according to like probabilities and that kind of thing. But now because he like cares about these people, he's like, my choice is responsible for someone dying, and like how do I live with that? In that kind of thing where it's like it's both like a very kind of like this is a person dealing with that question, but in the like through the execution of like this is a program kind of like and encountering an error as it's trying to like align all of the things that it is trying to do.
Yeah. This is like the reason why she has done this is that basically he just kept on like glitching out about this and was obsessing about this basically, and they couldn't do anything about it. So they were like, well, let's just delete his memory.
And there's a couple of conversations that Seven of Nine and Janeway have about this. Like the first one where Seven is like, this is the wrong thing to do. And, Janeway's kind of argument at that point is that like he is right, like as much as we kind of interact with him, he is just a machine. He's a computer program that's designed to like carry out a task. And so if there's an error in the program, we have to like fix it so that the program can continue carrying out his task. And basically Seven, as someone who like is like was brought in by this crew and like turned from essentially a machine back into a human is like, well, you know, like how is that any different than me? And like, you know, you can't just like he is a person, and you can't just like give up on him, basically.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, you know, we're kind of yada yadaing it a little bit because we're getting close to the you know, like our normal runtime of an episode, but like this scene is like the first scene of this is like so good, I think.
Yes.
The scene where Seven like confronts Janeway and is like, what you're doing is wrong. I feel very like strongly about this because like I am not a fully human person, and like I have all of these like basically things in my head, you know. And again, I think this is like another kind of indication toward the kind of thing you're talking about, where you're like, this could be seen as like someone who is having like just sort of like a mental issue, or not even a mental issue, but just like sort of like even something like neurodivergence of like this, where she's basically like, so what are you like, if you're saying like I'm a problem, like you would treat me
like
this
if
way,
I get
you know, like
too difficult to deal with, right? Like what's kind of the cutoff here?
Yeah. And it just as always, I think like I think that like Janeway is like, or that Kate Mulgrew I think is good in this scene, but like as always, just like Jerry Ryan like totally slays this, like like just completely crushes it. And yeah, I was really just like, man, she's so good.
Yeah, and I think it is so interesting that like, especially because like I feel like it's one of those things that's been said about the show that like apparently Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan really like either like disliked each other, or just kind of like, from what I've like heard from like interviews and stuff, like they were kind of like sort of frosty toward each other behind the scenes. But
was always my understanding that like it was sort of a one-sided thing.
Yeah, I think
of like, which, you know, which is, you sort of, which makes sense, like you get like why, but basically that like Mulgrew was like kind of just did not like having Jerry Ryan around because she was like, I was supposed to be like the important character on the show, and like the star of the show, but also like I was an important character because I was like the first female captain, and now like they have just come up with like a, you know, literally a sexier, you know, character to have, like
and
which
immediately started making all of like her like very much the primary focus of the show.
Yeah, and it's like I think that's a totally, I know you, because what you're about to say is that like they have such good chemistry on the show, which they do.
I feel like anytime there's a scene, like especially a scene that's just the two of them, like it's so good. Like they just, they have such a like well done dynamic whenever they work together.
Yeah, and I totally agree, but it's, I don't know, it is really, it's fascinating because it's like they have such a great dynamic, but also it's I do agree that like that would suck. I think if I was her, I would I understand like why she would be feeling that way, but then also it's like I do think they have a great chemistry, but also it's like you watch Jerry Ryan on the show and you're just like, well, it's undeniable, like she's so good, like it's, you know, like I would write all my episodes about her also, like like not because that's the thing too, is that like one thing that I think that they blessedly kind of do avoid on the show is that like there are not that many episodes of Star Trek that are about Seven being hot, or you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Like compare that to like how horny like Enterprise can get, and it's like that certainly was like a reason why they put her on the show, but then like that character is like not really a very sexual character, generally speaking, and
I think that's fair.
She is a character that they put like a lot of like dramatic weight on, and she is just able to carry it, I think, like pretty remarkably, like just throughout. And like this is just like a scene where it's like there are so many Star Trek episodes that have this scene, and a lot of them are good, but like there's also a lot of them that just kind of, the scene happens and you don't really ever think about it, and it's not like it's just like an okay episode, and like that's the difference maker between like an okay one and a good one, is just your ability to kind of like have this, you know, this psychological discussion, or this philosophical discussion, and have it work.
It just feels very
So really, really good scene.
Yeah. So then, kind of like we said, so they end up deciding, like, instead of just deleting the doctor's memories, we're going to kind of show him what happened and essentially, like, kind of let him decide for himself instead of just deciding for him. And so they show him the record of what happened, and he starts to kind of have the same feelings about it again, where he just kind of starts, like, getting real, like, kind of talking in circles about it and just kind of going over and over that, like, I killed this person.
And this is the part of the episode that I think doesn't work as well for me. I think this is I don't know, it's like, okay, yeah, like we're spending a lot of time on this.
I appreciate that they that they showed kind of all, like, they kind of went through the whole process. I think the last scene probably goes a bit too long for what it is,
especially because we've already just seen him do this, you know, like in the flashbacks.
Yeah, and then he kind of starts to do it again, and so that's when B'Elanna is like, well, here we're going through all of this all over again now. What are we going to do? And then Janeway basically decides that, like, she is going to just give the doctor however much time he needs to like process this and kind of like come to some sort of like acceptance and ability to move forward.
No, Janeway's just going to do it again. Like, she's just like because the doctor is basically like freaking out, and he's like, well, you should delete me, and then just like, you should just like delete me, period, you know. And so she's like, see, I was right.
I'm a killer.
And then Seven, though, is just like, you should not do this.
That's right. Yeah, she has another talk with Seven again. Yeah. And Seven again kind of like brings it back to herself. That is basically like, you gave me, I went through this like really hard thing, and like you gave me as much time and like support as I needed to go through it to like become a human again after being a Borg, instead of just like killing me or turning me off or sending me back to the Borg or whatever.
Yeah.
And so so then Janeway's like, okay, so they put the doctor in the holodeck to just kind of like process and this and like take as much time as he wants. And Janeway is just kind of sitting there, like keeping him company, basically.
Visibly bored,
yeah. And so like she's reading a book, and then he kind of has like a couple different times where he like, again, like it seems like it's kind of like spiraling in the wrong direction a little bit, because he's just like, well, actually, I guess if you think about it, like this is all, everything was predetermined by like the motion of atoms, and like no one has free will. And
this part like, is the part that really made me think about like child rearing, even though like he's kind of in a point that is like older than like my kids, but it's like this interesting thing of like, he's doing the thing that like I think people often do in college, you know, where they're just like, wait a minute, like what's up with like this whole like being alive thing, you know, like, and where it's just like, again, I think that if you are an adult, especially like an adult with like any kind of, you know, life experience or sort of like inner life, kind of you're sort of like
this stage at some point.
You're kind of like, yeah, sure,
yeah.
But it's like it's like one of those things where I think, again, if you're a patient person, you kind of have to recognize like this is sort of a kind of thing that like everybody has to do, you know.
Yes,
like,
and at the moment they're going through it is kind of the most important thing for them. And then you kind of get to a point where you just are like, well, I guess I can't care about that because I have stuff to do. And then like there's kind of a little thing where like Janeway is like, I'm really tired and have a headache, and the doctor kind of goes and like is like worried about her and cares about her, and kind of sort of, I think what they're trying to do is him like kind of rediscovering like, oh, like my actual purpose is like caring about people and helping people, and like that's kind of what I'm going to like sort of focus on and move forward with. But they do kind of leave it sort of like that he's not there yet, but he's like moving in the right direction when the episode
which is
ends.
a classic, I think, especially a classic Voyager thing of like, we'll sort of be like, it's going to take time, but he'll be, you know, he's going to be okay. Yes. And but then like in actuality,
in at least a week, he'll be totally back to normal.
In actuality, we'll never talk about it again.
Right.
Yeah. Which is always kind of a funny thing. But,
yes. I feel like B'Elanna Torres does that like very often, where it's like, wow, B'Elanna Torres is really like going through something. And then the next week she's just like, all right, time to fix the warp core. I'm fine.
Yep.
This episode's not about me. So.
But yeah, good episode though. I feel like even though we talked for a long time, I feel like I almost feel like we kind of gave it like a little bit of a short shrift, a little bit, but I did enjoy it, and especially the beginning. I thought it looked really cool. It was like a very like kind of confidently directed, thing, and I don't know. I liked it. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We come out every other week, so in a couple weeks we're gonna be back with Carbon Creek, which is actually reminding me a lot of a Voyager episode, which I'll talk about next time.
Okay.
I'm
glad you have something to say about that episode.
Season 2, episode 2 of Enterprise. So you can check us out. That's also co-written by Brian and Braga, actually. So,
yep.
I could tell. Yeah, we'll be back in a couple weeks. In the meantime, you can check us out on Blue Sky at Contreks. You can email us at oncontreks@gmail.com. You can visit our website at oncontreks.podbean.com, or you can follow us on YouTube at oncontreks. Contreks is spelled Contreks. You can also check out the other show on the Kaleidoscope Media Podcast Network, which is called Here's Johnny. That's a horror media podcast. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.